You're listening to The Road to Sparta, an Optimal Living interview with Dean Karnazes and Brian Johnson.
Hi, this is Brian. Welcome back to the Optimize podcast. Today I'm thrilled to be chatting with Dean Karnazes, who is the author of The Road to Sparta, reliving the ancient battle and epic run that inspired the world's greatest foot race. And he's also just an incredibly inspiring, fascinating human being. I'm going to share a little bit of his background and bio from our philosopher's note, because it truly, every time I read it, as I was preparing for this, my jaw was just dropped again. So Time Magazine recognized Dean as one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. Men's Health says he's one of the 100 fittest men of all time. And he's competed on all 7 continents, including a 350-mile run. I said that correctly, 350-mile run, a 135-mile ULTRAmarathon across Death Valley, and a marathon to the South Pole in negative 40 degrees. And then perhaps my favorite, those are all ridiculous, but perhaps my favorite is in 2006, Dean ran 50 marathons in all 50 U.S. states in 50 consecutive days, finishing with the New York City Marathon, which he completed in 3 hours flat. I don't even know what to say about that, Dean, but welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
I'm exhausted just listening to that introduction. Sounds like a lot of work, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, yeah.
Right on. Again, just such an inspiring story personally. And then you share a lot about your journey and Greek heritage in this book, The Road to Sparta. Just talk to us about it on a high level. What is this book about? Why'd you write it, et cetera?
Yeah, well, as perspective, this is my 4th book. And my agent always says it's amazing that you're a memoirist and you've kind of spun your life in 4 different directions, and each of them have been interesting. And I think The Road to Sparta is my most personal book in that I'm 100% Greek, and I went back to explore my Greek ancestry and the history of long distance running, which really started in 490 BCE with the Battle of Marathon. And Phidippides, the famous marathoner who, supposedly ran from the battlefield to the Acropolis and proclaimed, Nike, Nike, or Nike, Nike, which means victory, victory, we are victorious, and then dropped dead. So that's the legend that we live with today. And I wanted to learn the real story and tell it honestly, so that anyone running a marathon has a richer perspective on what they're doing, and I think would feel a greater sense of accomplishment if they read this book, because they'd know the lore behind and the regality of what they actually accomplished running a marathon.
Right on. And as a guy that doesn't run marathons but loves to challenge myself, I was also inspired just by the idea that we're capable of way more than we think. So to kind of move into that, tell us about the Battle of Marathon and what really happened with that ultra run, et cetera.
Well, yeah, so the Persians invaded Greece on the west coast at a place that was filled with wild fennel. Fennel grows wild, the herb, it grows wild all over Greece, and the word marathon means field filled with fennel. So the Persians landed there in 490 BCE. They had about 50,000 men, and they were going to basically overthrow Greece. The Athenians realized that they were badly outnumbered and needed reinforcements. So if you've ever seen the movie 300, who's the most badass fighting force in ancient Greece? The Spartans. This is Sparta. So they dispatched this foot herald named Phidippides to recruit the Spartans into battle. And that was 153 miles from Athens to Sparta. So Phidippides actually ran not a marathon, but what's rightly classified as an ultramarathon. And ultra means beyond. So he ran beyond a marathon. He ran 153 miles to Sparta to recruit the Spartans into battle. And that's the reality of what really took place.
Well, then the way I recall reading it was that the Spartans weren't ready to go to battle, right? So then he had to run back. Is that right?
Yeah, no, you're right. So he got to Sparta. He said to the Spartans, and he got there within 36 hours, which is amazing to think a human can run 153 miles continuous, in 36 hours. And this is 490 BCE. So, there's no headlamps. He ran straight through the night. He didn't have headlamps. He didn't have modern running shoes. I mean, he's running probably barefoot. And he gets to Sparta. The Spartans say, "Oh, it's horrible. We're being invaded. Of course, we're going to come and help. Try to overthrow the Persians and get them out. But we can't leave for battle for 6 days because the moon isn't full. And our religion, our religious law forbids us from leaving for battle until it's a full moon." So now Phidippides is perplexed. He's, the good news is the Spartans are coming. The bad news, they're delayed. They're not going to leave for 6 days. So he's thinking, I've got to go back and tell my fellow Athenians the news. So he turned around and deadheaded back to Marathon, another 153 miles before running that final marathon. So he ran cumulative more than 300 miles before actually the event that killed him.
Wow, which is just literally almost impossible to wrap my brain around. And then you make the point too that they actually had a name for guys like this, right? I forget how to pronounce it, but what was the day runner's name?
Yeah, so he was a part of a class of citizens that was called the ULTRAmarathon, which meant day-long runners. And these guys were foot messengers. The Greeks realized that in the mountainous, hilly terrain of Greece, especially southern Greece, a trained ULTRAmarathon could outrun a horse. And Phidippides, the translation of Phidippides' name literally means "spare the horse." In other words, this runner could go run to Sparta, and you wouldn't kill a horse. You'd spare the horse's life because this guy could run there just fine. So it was, that was kind of the Greek version of a faster internet. These runners, they could gather intelligence and disperse information quicker on foot than an invading force with the cavalry. And I've actually proven that out. I've raced against a horse during the Vermont Trail 100-mile endurance run. I've actually beat a horse after over a 100-mile course. So I know it can be done.
Of course you have. That's awesome.
Why not race a horse? Yeah.
It's so good. And then I think for our purposes, one of the things that was most inspiring for me is, if we could do that routinely, right, with the proper training 2,500 years ago, what are we capable of, right? And there's so much latent potential within us waiting to be expressed. And then just to finalize the Battle of Marathon story, you basically say this is almost inarguably the greatest athletic feat of all time because we literally saved Western civilization via that run, right?
Well, and I think that's that's part of the there's obviously a lot of themes played out in this book, but one of the strongest ones is that had this guy not succeeded in this run, what would society look like today? I mean, this whole idea of rule by the people, democracy, was new. It was just beginning to emerge in ancient Greece, and the Persians were a totalitarian society, kind of a top-down kind of thing with King Darius at the helm, and they would have crushed Greece, and this whole idea of democracy would have been squelched. And what would have emerged over 2,500 years, who knows? But so many of so much of the way we live our lives today was based on this early Greek culture and the evolution of this idea of democracy, and some of the the values of theater, of philosophy, of architecture, a lot of those things, mathematics. Those probably wouldn't have developed the way they did had Phidippides not succeeded in his run. Therefore,
thank you.
So every marathoner listening to this, you can pound your chest a couple times and say, "Good me," yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so now drilling into some of the practical stuff that I just loved in the book, you talked about balance and the fact that balance doesn't lead to happiness. You say balance doesn't lead to happiness. Impassioned dedication to one's life purpose does. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, so I give a lot of talks, and I travel the world, and people say, you've got a family, you're a husband. How do you find balance? And I kind of laugh. I say there is no balance. I mean, I think the whole notion of finding balance is somewhat idealistic. I think a good relationship is about a healthy imbalance, and that's kind of the way I see my life and my family life. Is life's very frenetic for us. We're traveling. I'm traveling. I was on the road 250 days last year, so it's fast-paced. It's disjointed, but it's really beautiful. And we have an underlying love for each other that I think sees through all. I don't think it's the quantity of a relationship that matters. I think it's the quality. And when I'm together with my family, it's just really good quality time. And we put down our screens. We really enjoy each other because it's for not a long duration. Sometimes I think being together too often, too much is an unhealthy thing.
Yeah, totally. That separation creates that intimacy, and to your point, it's intensity of focus while you're together, aka the quality of it, right? Vis-a-vis the quantity of yeah, I'm with you and I've got my iPhone out or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of sort of here.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've interviewed a lot of successful people and a lot of people that have done amazing things, and they're pretty obsessive about their whatever their passion might be. There's an obsession there and a compulsion, or else they're not going to rise to the level they have.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to hear you reflect on that a little more because it's something I reflected on in the note. A number of authors explicitly say that. And even one of my favorite mindfulness teachers who wrote a book called Mind, Dan Siegel, I was just caught by he articulated it as, I've been obsessed with the mind for decades now. And that's why he can write this book on it. So that willingness to go all in and to say, this is what matters to me and this is what I'm going to carve my life around. Can you just tell us about your relationship with your obsession and with your passion for living the life you do?
Yeah, well, there's a company I work with called the North Face, and they have a motto: never stop exploring. And I think that's kind of the modern motto of ancient Greece, which was this idea of arete, of personal bestness, of being the best you that you can be. And I think you need to look inward to find, to see what your true passions are. For me, it was running. And I know it's a very primitive, basic, simple act, running, but it's what I really love to do. And I finally, came to grips with that and said, boy, you just love to run. And, can you turn that into a life? Who would have thought it was possible to turn, especially ultra running, into a career and a life? But I thought, you're passionate about it, it's what you love, give it a go. And it somehow worked out. So I always tell people, even if it's basket weaving you're passionate about, throw your heart and your soul into it, dedicate yourself wholeheartedly to it, and you'll figure out a way to make a go of it.
Right on, and be your personal best. My listeners know that I often say that if I had to summarize my entire philosophy in one word, it's arete. It's that impulse to express the highest and best version of ourselves, which, as you know, the Greeks said was the heart of eudaimonia, right? Of that good soul. If we want to be flourishing and be truly happy, are we fully expressing ourselves? And so you're the first person I've interviewed, and I don't know how many who's ever reflected back arete, so I just love it.
Well, and the thing is, there's really three pillars. There's mind, body, and spirit. And, I think in Western culture, we've largely neglected two of those. I mean, we've developed incredible sophistication as far as, the use of our mind, but a lot of our bodies are deteriorated. And I just don't think you can achieve arete, no matter how smart you are and how accomplished you are, if you don't have a healthy body. And as well, spirit. I mean, interpersonal relationships, I think, are so important, especially for an athlete. I don't think you can have screwed up interpersonal relationships and perform at your best. I think you need that foundation. I think you need all three things, your mind, your body, and your spirit, to achieve arete.
That's amazing. And let's jump ahead. I want to ask you something. I was planning to ask you something before, but I want to go to our modern gymnasium and gymnasia. Your line about the 24-hour fitness with Harvard professors is one of my favorites ever. Can you walk us through how the Greeks oriented around that optimization of mind and body to allow spirit to come through?
Yeah, so the Greeks, as we know, they had their gymnasia, especially in Athens, and these were large, basically gyms, if you will, workout facilities, and the young men would spend all day in the gymnasia, and there were professors there. They would be educated in between classes, if you will. They would work out. So it was physical, it was and mental. These gymnasia were in the community, so there's a cross-pollination because the working class would also go in there and use the gym, and that way everyone was kind of together, across age groups, across class groups, So the stridations between people kind of disappeared. And the other thing they did, as we know, is they were all naked, which kind of strips away a lot of the pretensions we put on on our bodies. And that was one thing I think that that made everyone kind of equal in the gymnasia. I just think that idea now is more relevant than ever. And then it was actually Aristotle who started moving outside of the gymnasium, and he would teach his classes walking around. He would walk around Athens giving lectures, and people would follow him. And his disciples became known as the Peripatetics, which meant the wanderers, because he used to wander around Athens and lecture as he's walking around. And it was funny, I found a quote by Nietzsche in doing my research, and he said, only thoughts that happen while moving, have any value, basically.
Yeah, man, and I know that's one of the things you talk about in the book, and just your passion for running, right? And I do, a little trail running here. I feel like I don't relative to you, but I go out, and that hour for me in the morning is just, I take no technology on it, but I actually recently got an Apple Watch simply to record voice memos because there were just so many good ideas worth capturing, so inspiring.
Well, that's it's good to hear you say that, because I've literally written my 4 books while I've been running. I have a digital recorder, and as you said, you have some of your clearest thoughts while you're running. And so I just dictate into a digital recorder, and then when I'm on air flights, on planes, I'm traveling, I type up my notes.
That's amazing. So just practically speaking, so you actually just have like a handheld digital recorder?
I used to have a handheld. Now I just use my iPhone.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, for me, it's just that iPhone and we have a very interesting relationship. So I try to keep him away as much as possible. But the watch has been unbelievably cool. Just press record for anyone interested. Ridiculous app that syncs to the cloud, that syncs to your iPhone. You can send a message. Like I get done and I have 5 to 10 voice memos. Some of them are from me and my writing, and some of them are for the team. And it lets you just text it to the team, either the recording or the transcript. It's crazy cool. So plant that seed. Gymnasium, working out the mind and the body. Let's go back a little bit. And we were talking about purpose, and you decided that you're going to do what you could to make a career out of running. In the book, you share a story about an experience you had as a young kid when you went to John Wooden's basketball camp. And I just love the way you articulated, your relationship to basketball, right? And what you were good at and what you weren't, and what coach told you to focus on. Can you share that story?
Yeah, sure. It was, I was at a very impressionable age, and I was short. I wasn't the best basketball player, but I was really scrappy. I was willing to work harder than anyone else, but I just, I didn't feel like I could have much of an impact because I could never get rebounds. I wasn't a really good shooter, and I got frustrated, and I just kind of, lost the passion for playing. And Coach Wooden, it was one thing which is amazing. He attended these camps, and he would speak with us, which is kind of like, having Aristotle in the gymnasium, actually giving you life lessons. And, he said, God, I've been watching you, and, you're really quick. You're really good at stealing the ball. You're really scrappy. You can't get boards, but don't do everything. Do what you can do. And it stuck with me like, wow, that kind of makes sense. Like, just I can do these things, some things really well. I can't do other things at all. So do what I can do. And I think that attitude carried forward. I think when, you look at the world and you look at all the problems, you think, I want to fix everything. No one can fix everything. And then a lot of people get frustrated and don't try to fix anything. He kind of said, do what you can do. So fix what you can fix. And that just stuck with me as a way to conduct, not just sport, but life.
That's awesome, which comes all the way back to arte, right? Of what can you do in a way that no one else can do, and express that in your highest potential and flourish. Super inspiring. Let's talk about discomfort. You talk about the pain game in the book and your ability to endure an extraordinary amount of pain. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, and the general idea of just living outside of our comfort zones and being willing to tolerate discomfort individually and as a culture. Can you talk to us about discomfort and pain?
Yeah, well, I think we've gotten a lot of things wrong in Western culture, and I think we thought that if we had all of the conveniences, everything came easy, and there was this absence of pain, we'd be happy. And I think we're so comfortable, we're miserable. I think that I never feel more alive than when I'm struggling and in great pain, and I think any marathoner can relate to that. Any runner, I think, can relate to that. Running is not fun. It hurts. And when you run a marathon or ultra marathon, it really hurts. But when you reflect back on the moments in your life when you feel just most alive, it is during these moments of struggle. And so I think that running, kind of introduces that back into our life, and I think that can carry over again into other elements of your life. I think pain is something to be overcome, something to embrace. It's part of living. And if you watch television, I mean, half the commercials are from pharmaceutical companies saying, "Take this to deal with pain." Take this to deal with pain. And I just think that's the wrong approach at all. I think that pain should be embraced and looked upon as a challenge to be overcome. Just as any other challenge you try to overcome.
That's amazing. Can you drill into that a little bit more? Just like how you approach it, and less in your races and more just in your life.
Well, the whole idea of getting, how do you get through pain? And what I really like about running, and I mean, I'm kind of obviously you can tell I'm a preacher when it comes to running a marathon. I think every person should try to run a marathon because it teaches you so much about yourself. Because you're forced to have to overcome. How do you deal with pain? You're going to have pain. What do you do to get through it? And, what I found is that when I'm in moments of pain, what I used to do is try to put my mind somewhere else or chant a mantra, or, try to not pay attention to the pain. But now what I do is I really try to focus on the here and now, just the present moment of time. And when you're running a marathon, that can be as granular as just trying to put your next footstep in front of your last footstep to the best of your ability. So you're not thinking about, where's the next hash mark for that mile. You're not thinking about how far I've got to go to the finish line. You're just thinking about taking your next step to the best of your ability. And I think that's how I get through pain in the rest of my life, is that I don't look for when is this going to be over. I just look for being in the here and now and in the present moment of time and doing the best you can at that moment. And it's almost like a Zen-like state. And running teaches you how to get into this place, the zone, if you will.
One step at a time, pure focus. Again,
baby steps, yep.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about that a lot in our work. Okay, so as one of the 100 fittest men of all time, what should we be thinking about to optimize our both fitness and just overall health and well-being?
Well, the one encouraging thing I will tell the listeners is people can change. So I'll never live down the story of in my first book where I was trying to run this 200-mile relay race, just solo because I don't have 11 friends. So I was out, running 200 miles by myself, and I was in this remote area. It was late at night. I didn't have any food. I ran out of food. There was nothing out there, but I had a cell phone and a credit card. So I ordered a pizza as I was running and had him deliver this pizza to me on the run and basically rolled it up into a big kind of Italian burrito and ate a pizza as I was running. So, I used to eat a lot of junk food. And, over the course of the past decade, I've really changed my diet a whole lot. And I think that's contributed a lot to my overall health. So I've kind of gone to this modified paleo diet, if you will. If I can't pick it from a tree, dig it from the earth, or catch it with my hands, I won't eat it. So I've kind of eliminated all packaged foods. And I think that just doing that alone has really improved my health. And I've basically stopped eating grains altogether, all grains. So no wheat, no rice, no oats, no barley. And that is just, it helped me naturally lose body fat and shift to a higher percentage of lean muscle tissue. So I think the dietary shift, along with this idea of constantly working out. So throughout the course of the day, I've got a pull-up bar in my office and a sit-up mat, and I have this HIIT routine, which you probably know, high-intensity interval training, that consists of pull-ups, push-ups, dips, sit-ups, and burpees. And it's about a 12 to 14-minute routine, but it elevates your heart rate very, very high. So even after, before this interview, I did a set. After this interview, I'll do a set. And again, it's 12 to 14 minutes, and then I'll just get back on, with my emails, and I've got another couple things I'm writing right now. So I'll get back to my writing, and I might go for a run later on, but throughout the course of the day, maybe 5 or 6 times, I'll go into this HIIT routine.
Of 12 minutes. So it's basically like a little micro workout?
It's a micro workout. Yep. But your heart rate is very highly elevated. So you're basically working every muscle in your body.
Oh, no, that's great.
The pull-ups, the push-ups, sit-ups, yeah. It's just very high intensity, very quick.
That's amazing. And then, as you said, continuous. You're doing it throughout the day. You're not active and sedentary, right? Where you did your workout, but then you sat the rest of the day. I'm just asking.
I tell people that all the time. Yep. I think that's so key. I say, don't compartmentalize your workout. Don't say, I've got to go, get my gym time in for an hour. View yourself through the lens of an athlete. Be the best animal you can be, which means, going to the gym for an hour, walking out in your track stuff, maybe running to your car in the parking lot, driving to your office, running up the stairs. I know it sounds kind of weird, but always have a stand-up desk, and if you can, get a sit-up mat and just put it next to your to your cubicle.
I'm moving mine in from our little gym into the office. But yeah, my thing is burpees. So I have like a 15-minute timer that counts down. I'll just bang out 10 burpees. So I just do 100 burpees a day and do the pull-ups and do, the rowing and all that kind of stuff. But it's inspiring to hear your training mechanics and just that level of consistent intensity. Like that's just super inspiring. And as expected, we'll be upping up my game. So thank you.
Well, and I travel a lot. It's I get to the hotel room. I'm eyeing any finger hold for my pull-ups, or a lot of times there's a shower rod where I can do chin-ups. So it's the routine I've got. You can do it anywhere you're at, which I really like. I mean, you can do burpees in your hotel room. It probably sounds kind of weird, but you can still do it.
Yeah. That's amazing. And then you mentioned in our little prelude, when you travel, you create a standing desk how?
Well, I use the ironing board from the hotel. I pull up the ironing board and put it next to the window. It's great because most of the kind of desk setups in hotels face a wall, right? So you're looking at a blank wall versus standing up, looking out a window, seeing the outside and doing your work on an ironing board.
So good. What like practical idea have we not talked about that you think would be fun to share?
There's one thing that I learned about in researching the road to Sparta, and it was something that the ancient Greeks called the Apostles' Fast, which we know about fasting now with mostly around religious holidays, and these are kind of modified fasts. But ancient philosophers used to routinely fast for 24 hours or 48 hours. So I've kind of gone into this cycle periodically of intermittent fasting, and I think that's a really incredible thing because one, it teaches you discipline to overcome your natural urges to eat, and it's really tough to do. But if you can fast periodically for if you can try a 24-hour fast, it's amazing how great you start to feel. And I know it's that the whole idea of intermittent fasting is kind of becoming more mainstream now, but I've been doing it for about a decade.
That's awesome. Yeah, I try to eat within an 8 to 10 hour window of time every day and have that kind of daily intermittent fast, and do like to do kind of the seasonal fasting. What's the rate or frequency with which you do that sort of 24-48?
I would say maybe 1 or 2 days a week. I'll try to do a 24-hour fast.
Really? Wow, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then I'll echo your experience with eliminating kind of the modified paleo approach of eliminating grains. And for me, just upping the greens and all of that and the fat. And it's been just truly astonishing to see my energy levels, my blood sugar levels, and my body fat percentage levels optimize. So just to echo my own personal experience in that, and I appreciate you sharing and experimenting and bringing that wisdom home. Well, if you were going to share one piece of wisdom to someone passionate about optimizing their lives so they can make a difference in the world, what would that one piece of wisdom be?
Oh man, there's a couple proverbs I really like, and I guess one of them is it was a Chinese proverb that went something along the lines of be not afraid of moving slowly, be afraid only of standing still. So people think, boy, that like writing a book. It's such a heady game because you've got to fill 300 pages somehow with something that people want to read, and it's overwhelming at points. And I just would say that proverb to me all the time, like you're moving slowly, but that's okay. Just don't stop.
Wow. Which works in your races and your writing and in every aspect of your life. Dean, I really appreciate you and just the life that you've created for yourself and the embodiment and demonstration of arte and enthusiasm. So thank you for being you, and thank you for taking the time. Where can people learn more about you and dive even deeper into you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, they can just go to my website, which is ULTRAmarathonman.com. That was the title of my first book. And they can learn more about, the Road to Sparta or any of the other books I've written, and as well as some of my adventures, like running 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days. And I kind of, I wrote a book about that. I mean, to me, it was the ultimate road trip. I took my family along. We got to see, all 50 of the U.S. states, and I got to run a little bit and exercise in between.
Well, we need to talk after this because we're planning to do a road trip with our family, but we're going to do 50 cities in a year, right? And just kind of see our community around the country and then plan to do it around the world. So I was inspired as I was prepping for this and remembered that you had done that. But that's awesome. So ULTRAmarathonman.com. The Road to Sparta is fantastic. And check it out. If you're into sports and heroic feats and memoirs, it's a fantastic read. So Dean, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.